you're welcome to join the conversation. I've just posted the join link in the chat. And yeah, I look forward to welcoming you and to hearing Erik speak. So Erik, can you give us a little bit of a backstory why you're here today?
Yes. Well, we got to talk, Candice, on the amazing power of design and making impacts. And throughout my career, I've been focusing on different aspects of design. I was trained as a product designer and then sort of explored the world of brand design and innovation strategy. And then I ended up becoming a service designer because there I found that most of my talents were useful, and services are these great multifaceted beasts that are great to work on and great to design. And at some point in that part of my career, I got to, and I guess that's what this talk is partly about, initiate more and more innovations rather than waiting for clients to come to me with their questions. I started to sort of pinpoint opportunities in the market and go out there myself. And that has been a lot of fun and very exciting. So partly my talk today is about the content and the whales and what I've done with whales, and partly I want to reflect a little bit on I suppose the role of designers in not only facilitating and only solving their clients' problems, but really being out there as thought leaders and entrepreneurs and showcasing what could be done. We have this amazing power of imagination, and we have the capacity and the skill set to make things tangible and real. And I think we should put that talent to use, not only to wait for briefs, but to actually go out there and showcase things. Yeah.
So pretty wonderful. So it's 5 past. Usually at this point, I think it's fair to start your talk if you like. But we can also wait for a few more people to join. So that's your choice.
So are there people outside of this platform also now joining? Which platform is that?
Yeah. On LinkedIn, so it's being streamed on LinkedIn.
Okay, you have viewers there too.
Did I not? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. It's just sort of to know who I'm talking to. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the LinkedIn event is for streaming, and then the meetup page was for registering to get the link to the stream. And then, of course, on the portal, I also just have all the information there for the Design for Tomorrow Awareness Initiative.
Right.
But collectively, it gives people a couple of different options because, for example, when I was full-time employed, I used to listen to podcasts during my working hours. And then, of course, it's not good to join, but just to watch online. And we typically do have a lot more online viewers than live participants. And also, people come back to watch it, so they come back to rewatch it at a later stage. So it's keeping the information available for them to, if they miss the event, they can still go to LinkedIn, go to the live stream, watch it. And that way, we just have it for a little bit longer.
Well, sure. I'm ready to start if you want.
Okay, so we'll mute ourselves and remove our cameras, and then we'll disappear from the picture, and then the floor is all yours.
Cool. All right. Well, first of all, Candice, thank you for having me here. And I really, I love this topic. I love talking about this. And I mean, I've been doing a lot of conference talks on service design and ecosystem design and all that, the theory. And I've been teaching at TU Delft and trying to teach processes and tools. And right now I'm in a part of my career where I want to talk about content much more. I don't want to talk so much about how I do things, but much more about what I accomplish and the impact me and my colleagues and my teams are making. So this talk is mostly about that. It's about a topic that's very, very close to my heart, and work that I've been doing that's actually very close to my heart. That is partly pro bono work. I'm very privileged to be able to do that kind of pro bono work. But partly it's also just part of my current career. So helping whales save the planet. Let's just get going. And I already told you a little bit about myself. This story mostly takes place in my previous career, which was at LiveWork. I was innovation director at LiveWork. I left LiveWork in September last year. I'm now independent by myself again, truly enjoying it, I must say. But most of this project took place in my time at LiveWork. So let's go. Let's see. There we go. So I have 3 stories to tell today. One is about whales and how amazing whales are and how they sequester huge amounts of carbon. It's a bit the technical story of why whales are interesting from a climate change perspective. But it's also just a really magical story on how natural ecosystems work and how our ocean works. It's just something that I've been hugely inspired by. My dog is barking in the background. I don't know why. She's a bit restless, but if you hear a bark, that's not me, that's my dog. I will try to get her to say hi at some point. Then the second topic that I want to talk to you about is how I turned this insight into whales and blue carbon into a value proposition and work for 2 whale NGOs. And sort of how did I sell my ideas and this concept to them, and how did that come into being? And the third topic is something that I would like to discuss with you, actually, and what I'd like to sort of have bounce some ideas back and forth on with you, which is, as designers, can we be more entrepreneurial, and can we initiate more and sort of showcase our talent and our tool set and our approach, not by only applying them to client work, but actually, or our company's work, but actually initiating innovation. So these 3 topics. Let's first dive into the story of whales and blue carbon. This whole story started where I was with a few colleagues looking into LiveWork's carbon footprint. We are a service design agency. We had locations across the globe. We were flying up and down to clients. We had a lot of international clients. And as you can see, we had quite a footprint, and we were becoming more and more aware of this. And this was 2020. We've been tracking our footprint for a while, and we were looking into, okay, how can we reduce our footprint? How can we take the train more often? How can we travel less? This was also at the beginning of COVID, when traveling wasn't possible, so that helped. But also we were looking at, what can we do with this footprint? How can we make ourselves more aware? How can we maybe involve our clients in mitigating it? How can we maybe compensate for some of this footprint? And I started looking into this. And basically, when you look into carbon offsetting, you get a lot of programs that focus on trees. And there's a lot of this about. As a company, you can basically compensate your footprint by planting trees, and those trees will take carbon from the atmosphere, and they will produce oxygen and thus sort of mitigate your footprint. Now, there's a lot of talk about whether offsetting is right or wrong. There's 2 main ways of offsetting. One is voluntary offsets, which is when you when you book a flight and you feel like, gosh, I'm producing a lot of carbon, let's plant a tree. That's voluntary offset. And then you have compliance offsetting, which is the official, let's say, the official carbon market. And the official carbon market is about purchasing carbon credits so that you can produce, so that you're legally allowed to emit carbon. Today, we are not talking about the compliance offsetting market or the carbon market or purchasing carbon credits. That's a hugely complex story. It's a very financial, intricate world. We don't want to touch that. What we are talking about is basically a voluntary compensation for the carbon you emit by doing something good for the planet. And this is what we at LiveWork wanted to do. I mean, the thinking is usually, can we reduce our carbon footprint? And that part which we cannot reduce, can we at least compensate for it somehow? Again, this is not a solution. It doesn't solve the problem, and carbon compensation should never be a goal in itself. It also doesn't work like, oh gosh, I'm compensating, so I'm allowed to emit. It doesn't work like that. But for the part of the carbon that you cannot reduce or that's just impossible, it doesn't hurt to donate to natural causes. So with LiveWork, we were thinking we should do this. This would be a good thing to do. So I started looking into carbon offset programs for a small, medium-sized enterprise like us. And there were, all I found was tree planting programs. And again, when you dive into that, there's a lot of things to say about planting trees. Trees are amazing and we need them and they're fantastic, but it takes a long time for them to actually start sequestering carbon. Also, tree planting is not always the solution. You can only plant trees there where there's barren soil. Where there's barren soil for a reason. So tree planting is not always easy, and there's some shadiness amongst these programs. And I was thinking, geez, is that all there is? And then I stumbled upon an article, and I will share all these links later, but you can also Google nature's solution to climate change, and you will find this article. This article was a pretty groundbreaking thing that triggered a lot of discussion, because basically what happened here was that the International Monetary Fund, in the person of Ralph Chami is an economist who's very much interested in the economy of nature-based solutions and the value of nature in our climate change challenges. He wrote an article where he said, hey, if you look at whales and if you look at the science about whales, they are actually worth a lot on the carbon market because they sequester huge amounts of carbon during their lifetime, much more than trees. And basically he did a bit of math and he did some calculations, and he calculated that if you would price a whale according to the carbon market price, it would be worth around 2 million. Well, that, to me, something clicked in my brain when I read that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is fascinating. This is, first of all, I love the ocean. I'm a sailor. I'm on boats as much as I can in my life. I love whales. I love everything ocean, but especially whales. They're majestic, amazing creatures. And this article sort of pointed me at, wow, these animals actually sequester huge amounts of carbon and produce huge amounts of oxygen. I never heard of that. I didn't know that. I always thought of trees. So then I thought, okay, wow, I want to know more. Again, this was COVID time, so I had some free time on my hand because some of our clients decided to stop working with us. So I started reading, and there's a scientist called Joe Roman who does a lot of research into how whale ecosystems work and how whales produce this carbon and how they sequester this carbon and produce this oxygen, and how that whole ecosystem in the ocean actually works. And it's scientific literature, but I love this stuff. It's super fascinating. And I think I'm a bit of an omnivore and I have a very broad interest when it comes to these kind of things. I just started reading, and I couldn't stop. I got into the world of blue carbon, and you could say there's a lot of green carbon in the world, which is forests and pastures and those kind of, plant-based natural resources that through photosynthesis take carbon from the air and produce oxygen. But then there's a thing called blue carbon, and blue carbon is about all the marine ecosystems that actually do the same. And this is mangrove forests, it's seaweed, algae, it's marshlands, salt flats, all these marine ecosystems that we have a lot of in the world that actually contribute significantly to the carbon balance on our planet. And somehow this whole world of blue carbon is not as known and not as researched and not as well established as the world of green carbon. And I just got hugely fascinated by this because of my love for the ocean. And I was thinking, wow, why couldn't we compensate our carbon much more through blue carbon initiatives, through whales? And then I discovered this image, and this image explains a lot of how this works. This is from whale and dolphin conservation, much more about them later. Basically, if you follow this scheme, it explains a lot. What happens is that whales go to the depth of the oceans, and we mean really, really deep, and they feed there. They come up to the surface to breathe. Whales are mammals. And they take what they ate and they create currents and they bring nutrients up to the surface. When they're up at the surface, they don't only breathe, but they've created these currents, they've brought nutrients up to the surface, and they do gigantic poops. You can imagine a whale, huge animal, when they poop, they seriously poop. It's a huge amount of smelly stuff that you see here. And in that poo is an enormous amount of nutrients. Think sulfur and nitrate and Lord knows what, everything that phytoplankton eats. Phytoplankton is a photosynthesis algae. And basically what phytoplankton does is it combines sunlight and CO2 to produce energy and oxygen. So basically phytoplankton is the forest of the ocean. Phytoplankton does exactly the same as trees, but then in the ocean. So they absorb nearly a third of human-generated carbon dioxide. This number varies a bit according to the literature you read, but let's say anywhere between 30 and 40% of the carbon in our atmosphere is sequestered by phytoplankton. And they produce about 50% of the world's oxygen. So every other breath you take, you should thank phytoplankton for it. The other half might be trees and grasslands and those kind of things. Half of the oxygen in our atmosphere is produced by phytoplankton in the oceans. So they are like floating rainforests. And this to me was like such an awe-inspiring, amazing example on how nature works, and how fantastic that this phytoplankton is actually purely dependent on the nutrients in whale poo. Basically, there where there are whale populations, their whale pods, that's where phytoplankton grows. When there's no whales, there's also no phytoplankton. So there's a very strong correlation between the presence of this amazing microalgae that's so very, very vital for our planet and the presence of whales. And then I thought, wow, this is just such a cool example of how intricate nature works and how we humans put ourselves above this whole system and think that we can own it and steer it and think that we can. I mean, there's a lot of talk now about deep sea mining and the way we fish our oceans and cast the nets away, and whales get entangled in them and actually die from entanglement, or how whales get disoriented by ship engines and they actually strike into the ships and die, and all these things. And we as humans just take this whole intricate ecosystem and sort of possess it and disturb it and distract from it, extract from it. And I thought, wow, if you leave nature alone, how amazing is it at giving us what we need, taking our carbon from the atmosphere, cooling our planet, and giving us oxygen. You just need to leave it alone. And I was just really awestruck by this whole ecosystem. And then there's the thing of the worth, the whales that are, they're called keystone species, which basically means they're at the top of a food chain, just like gorillas, just like elephants, just like tigers. And keystone species always are responsible for a huge amount of biodiversity and thus a lot of carbon sequestering. If you do the math, if you are an economist and you look at this from an economic perspective, and it's interesting to look into the debate that this has ensued, because later on after this article, a lot of people, a lot of biologists have said, please don't make whales part of the compliance carbon market. Don't put a price tag on whales. Don't see them as economic asset. They are natural wonders. They have a soul, they have a culture, they have a language, they have family ties. They even have names. They talk to each other with names. They're just amazing creatures. They are not our economic asset. So let that be established. But once you see how much they are worth from a value perspective, not so much in a monetary perspective, but just the way they enable this amazing oceanic ecosystem to thrive, it is just very worthwhile to protect them. So here I started thinking, wow, we are a company, we want to do something about our carbon footprint. Whales are worth investing in because they're so good for the planet, they're so good for us. Wow, 1 + 1 is 2, huh? Let's look for some kind of program where I can donate to a whale conservation company, NGO, to mitigate my carbon footprint. So this is where the thinking started, and this is where I got into basically imagining this program, and back to the live work carbon footprint, sort of thinking, wow, why should we invest in whales? Why can't we in trees? Why can't we invest in whales instead? So, you know, a whale sequestered about 33 tons of CO2. That's its body mass. Its body mass is purely CO2. When they die, 33 tons of CO2 sink to the ocean and are sequestered actually quite solidly for thousands of years, because the ocean is so deep. It takes a very long time for that carbon to actually go out into the atmosphere again. So it's a very good way of sequestering. Each whale represents about 25 trees. But then if you look at the poo story, that poo that is essential phytoplankton, that is about 37 billion tons of CO2 per year. That's representing, I can't even, what is this number? Billion and more than that, trillion? I have no idea, but it's 4 times the Amazon rainforest in terms of carbon sequestering power. So that is amazing. And that is actually, when you think of that, we're always talking about trees. Wow, actually, this is 4 times the Amazon forest in terms of carbon sequestering capability and oxygen production, half of every molecule of oxygen in our atmosphere. That's amazing. And then this was the big insight. I Googled, I searched, I really did my best. There is no voluntary offset service that focuses on whales instead of trees and helps SMEs like LiveWork and private people like you and me mitigate their footprint through whale conservation. It just did not exist. So I was like, okay, it's COVID. I have some time. I feel entrepreneurial. I have an idea. I'm interested. I'm passionate. All the ingredients to just make this happen. So I started putting together some thoughts. I started doing more research. And at some point, I stumbled upon the whale and dolphin conservation. And the whale and dolphin conservation have a program, or they have a part of their website called The Green Whale. And The Green Whale actually talks about, you know, part of the reason that we protect whales and that our mission is to protect whales and dolphins is because they're good for climate change. They help sequester carbon. This NGO is always looking at whales and their value as being intrinsic. They are beautiful animals. They deserve our protection, period. But once you've established that, they also look at, okay, what are the benefits of whales when it comes to biodiversity, when it comes to the whole food chain, fish populations, et cetera, and thus also carbon sequestration. And so I saw them, I had my idea, at some point I called them up and I said, listen, I have an idea about, a program that helps me compensate for my carbon by supporting you. Would that be something you are interested in? And I was talking to a secretary and I was asking basically like, well, who should I talk to? Is this something that is relevant for you? And she said, just a second, sir, I think you need to talk to our CEO, because I think this is quite important what you're saying here. And I think you're onto something. Give me a second. And a minute later, she returned to the phone and she said, I have our CEO here and he wants to talk to you. And this is this guy, Chris Butler Strout. And he became somewhat of a friend. He's an amazing guy, super, super intelligent, really, really good guy. Very, very calm, British, super visionary, insightful leader who runs this NGO. He's the CEO. And he said, hi, Erik, this is Chris, and please tell me your story. So I told him my story, and I said, there is no program that helps me support whales from a climate perspective, from a carbon offsetting, carbon compensation perspective. Why not? And is this something that you could, build, or that we could build together? And he said, this is amazing. This is exactly what we need. This is exactly the stage of our maturity we're in. This is very, very relevant for us. Let's set up a meeting with my partners, with the management team, because I'd like you to present your story to them as well. And a week later, that's what we did. And they decided to set up a partnership with us, where we became a co-initiator of this program. So we wrote a letter of intent where we said, listen, we'll partner, we'll do this for free, this is worthwhile for us, and we'll help you design this program. We are service designers, so we can design a service. You know all about whale protection. Together, let's create a value proposition that makes sense to the market, and let's go out and do this. This was all in the course of about 1 month. This went very quick, because whale and dolphin conservation really felt like this is so relevant for us. We need to move fast before someone else does. This is very much in our DNA. This is very much part of how we think. And this may actually open up a revenue stream for us that is untapped currently. So we totally believe in this. So let's go for it. So I was very happy and sort of, and I talked to my partners at LiveWork, of course. My fellow director said, listen, guys, it's COVID. We're not so busy anymore. Can I do some pro bono work? And they said, of course, Erik, go ahead. So I sort of had freedom to start doing this. So we formed a team. So this is CEO, and there's partnerships, all these great people. Like Ed Fox is also a super good guy, amazing, cool guy. These are my own colleagues. We basically formed a little team to work on this together. And we got to work. The first thing we did was to decide not to call it carbon offsetting, because the world of offsetting is just a bad reputation. Offsetting has the sound of, once you've done that, you're allowed to emit carbon. We didn't want any of that. So we didn't want anything to do with that. So if you go to the website now and to the whole program that's live, there's no talk about offsetting. It's you donate to a good cause because you are climate aware, because you want to help the climate, because you want you believe in nature, in nature-based solutions, but it's not offsetting in any way. We got to work, and I got to sort of visualize the value proposition. As a designer, I think in how can we communicate this? How can we create something that really resonates with people? How can we engage people in this story? So I just started creating slides, and every week we had a meeting where I presented my thoughts, and this was one that clicked. If forests are one lung of the planet, oceans are the other. We talked about, the numbers a little bit. We basically said, research shows that more and more families and businesses want to offset their carbon footprint. Whale conservation is a great way to do this. Why? Climate change, biodiversity, empower communities, promote circularity. And actually what we kept on hearing is, I didn't know this. I didn't know that whales did this. And everyone we talked to said, wow, this is amazing. This is super interesting. This is very inspiring. This is great. More and more we got to in the details. And I think as what I've learned from this is like, what is now the value that I contribute as a designer to this? Because they know much more about whales than I do. What I can bring to the table is this notion of, I can imagine how a customer would be engaged by this value proposition and start using it in a way that generates revenue for whale and dolphin conservation. So I see the story, I see the hook, I see how it engages. I think of it as a service that I can use. I think in target groups, different target segments, different motivations to do this. And then I think in the economic side and the revenue stream and the money it generates. And I think in this one sentence, I mentioned maybe 5 different perspectives: the customer perspective, the economic perspective, the biological whale perspective, the service usage, user friendliness perspective, etc. And I think the only thing I did was bring this to the table and structure it and give it a face, give it a structure, a slide that people could talk about. And I think my role was very much to trigger that discussion and to help them imagine that this could be a thing that they would do. They could imagine what this might look like. They could imagine how this would help them reach certain target groups that they weren't reaching yet. Just by visualizing and structuring. So here what I'm doing is I'm talking about the value proposition in terms of 3 different target groups: families and private persons, small and medium-sized enterprises, and large corporations. We decided to focus on 1 and 2 only, and eventually now we're only focusing on 2 because families and private persons is already part of their work. So if you focus on those target groups, what is then the program, what is then the research focus, and what is sort of the marketing channels that you can use? And this is no rocket science. This is just me creating a slide in maybe 20 minutes, but it did help them to structure their thoughts and to get going and to pick this topic up. I did a lot of research for them and with them on what kind of revenue can we expect from this? What is this market worth? What is the untapped value sort of that we're not unlocking yet? And they always like the estimated forward related offset programs 90%, current whale offset program 0%. So we basically had a blue ocean literally to create this value proposition in. And percentage of people that love whales 100%. So, and this is a bit of a joke. This is just me sort of playing a game with the typical McKinsey slide where you do all the numbers, and I turn that into a narrative that really resonates with them, where they're thinking, oh my gosh, there is no whale offset program. Let's build it. There's work to do. There's only 25% of whales left, and everyone loves whales. So it's just a way of helping them find the energy and find the steps to take to make this happen. I did some slides on business models. I did research on a go-to-market plan, and I sort of helped them see like what kind of research do we need to do, what kind of design work is there to be done, do we need back-end development, or can we use the existing infrastructure of their donations and their platforms, etc. And when can we launch? And all of this they were very grateful for, because this is an NGO, so they don't have a lot of resources. They're always super busy, and I've really come to admire how NGOs work. Yeah? Like, my God, they're super busy. They work super hard. They're very passionate about the cause. They can really use this kind of help. I did a competitive analysis looking into what is there. I did some financial projections into cash flow and into costs they would have to make to get this program live and when donations would start to come in. And then we created a bit of a pitch deck for Chris, so he could go out to partners and pitch this story and get some funding for the development. And all of this was us. They were not a traditional client in the sense that they told us what to do. This was very much us working with them as entrepreneurs, thinking of what they may need, thinking of what would be a good next step, and it was in complete openness. And there was a lot of trust. It was very inspiring in that sense, because they basically saw us as an equal partner, and the ownership of the idea and the ownership of this whole initiative was shared. It was not them as clients hiring us to make this happen. It was very much us in partnership, and I really enjoyed that type of work. Then we, at some point, we did some qualitative research, and actually this was a paid little assignment. Chris had arranged some budget. He said at some point, listen, you've been doing so much. I want to give you some budget to do some research because we really need it. And this is very much core to our work. Yeah? We do a lot of qualitative research, contextual research, design research. So to dive deep into what drives people, what motivates people, what makes them tick, is very much how we work. So it was quite easy for us to pick this up. And we did a very small target group research into how do you offset carbon, how do you donate, what kind of causes do you support, what kind of mandate do you have to make donations as a business, and those kind of things. And we talked about, what kind of causes are you aware of? What are you aware of your carbon footprint? Do you calculate your own carbon footprint? How do you compensate? What are you interested in? What do you know about compensating? What causes do you support? And what do you expect in terms of engagement and education for your staff and your employees? Because by that time we were thinking this should be more than just a donation. This is actually a way to learn about whales. It might be a way to do, for example, beach cleanups together, to really engage your staff and create a sort of an employment engagement model around this support. So we did the whole Miro thing that was emerging, of course, during COVID, and did a lot of collaboration, a lot of co-creation with the teams, basically also empowering them to use some simple design methods like journey mapping or what have you, road mapping, to bring this value proposition to life. And one of the things we got back from them was, hey, we've developed quite some initiatives in our time, but what you are doing with us and for us is actually structuring that process and giving us the tools and the insights that really help us to develop this proposition in a structured way. And we feel like we're much more on top of things. We feel like we're being much more efficient. We're collaborating better. And actually this innovation project doesn't feel as chaotic as it would normally feel, because you bring a lot of structure to the work. So that was really nice to hear, and that was that's what we're for. I think if that's the value we can bring, that's just really cool. So we started developing a roadmap. We started planning. We started dividing tasks. Here are all the people that were involved. And really, see this as a project and imagine the project. I mean, here's an NGO that gets money from support and rallies and donations and their typical good cause. But now they were actually planning to address small and medium-sized businesses to basically take a subscription on this support activity. So not a not an ad hoc donation, but to actually take a subscription that is partly based on your carbon footprint, and then have a monthly amount, and in return for that monthly amount you get engagement activities, and you get to follow a whale, or you get to go on a whale watching trip, or you get to clean a beach, and you get education material, etc., etc. So this was quite an ambitious project that was way beyond their normal NGO activities. That's why it involved a lot of different people. That's why it involved a lot of different work streams, and quite some thinking, and quite some structuring and organizing. So here you see a customer journey map we made with them, where people go through the stages of becoming aware of ways to contribute, and then orienting on different causes, and getting to know the program, choosing, then welcoming them into the program, their monthly payment, etc. So again, very simple. Again, this is not rocket science. This is nothing too deep, but it helps to structure. It helps to divide tasks. It helps to bring focus to the project. And then eventually we brought out an advice for focus. A lot of these initiatives get too big, and then nothing ever happens. So we really looked at, where's the MVP? How can we bring this live as soon as possible? So focus on maritime businesses. Smaller companies target the entrepreneur themselves. It's not about the exact footprint and offset costs. Partnering up, and all this advice was to help them give direction. By that time, we had formed quite a consortium with whale and dolphin conservation. So it was us, it was the branding agency, and that branding agency was RAW, very cool agency in London, that did a yearly pro bono cause. And they chose whale and dolphin conservation as that year's pro bono cause. So they were involved. There was Rebalance Earth, which is Ralph Chami's vehicle for very clever nature-based resources, carbon sequestering schemes on a blockchain. You check it out. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting, cool program. And we were trying to do with whales what he was doing with elephants and gorillas in Africa. So we learned a lot from him on his program. Then Deloitte was involved, also pro bono, with a lot of carbon market knowledge and a lot of financial knowledge. And then Ruben Turner from Rewild, an agency that did rewilding value propositions. Rewilding is the notion of letting nature do its thing, so it can regenerate ecosystems. And he was involved also from a value proposition perspective. He was very experienced in developing these kind of propositions. So with quite a team, and everyone was working really hard, and it led to a whole brand language, a whole tone, mood and tone. The name Climate Giants was a name that was coined by the branding agency, a whole visual language, colors, schemes, etc. And by this time, I was able to actually fade out a little bit, because the project was starting to carry itself. And Deloitte was putting in a lot of hours, and the WDC was actually carrying the project themselves. And this is their annual report, I believe, 2022. Yes. So this is last year's annual report, where their whole, save the whale, save the world is the tagline, hashtag Climate Giants. There's now a lot happening within this program. Deloitte has published a whole report on their partnership with WDC. There's a lot of things happening that are part of this program, and that is now actually part of the revenue stream of WDC and part of their daily work. They assigned a manager to this program, so they hired someone to be responsible for the Climate Giant program. Also super good guy, very, very very driven, very passionate. And this thing is now running itself, and it's pretty cool to see. So this is all part of their annual report, and that's the whole purpose. They're growing their numbers of partners and corporate supporters, and that's where a huge revenue stream for them is, that was previously untapped, and that is now being tapped. You see here LiveWork, one of the founding partners, and super proud to have been part of this story. And then Chris Butler, who's talking about how, you know, you meet a company with a team of amazing people who can take an idea and open one's eyes to the possibilities of what can be achieved. And I think that is really cool. As a design entrepreneur, that's exactly the kind of compliment I love to get, because apparently I've opened their eyes, and I've, you know, helped them accelerate this and actually realize a value proposition that otherwise they wouldn't have realized it. And then very briefly, let me check the chat, because maybe there's questions that I'd like to answer now. Why isn't that working? It is working. I'd like to introduce. Okay, cool. Yeah, okay, good. No questions from me. So basically, WDC, they're now on their own. They're running this. I'm a partner. I donate to them. I love them. My daughter is doing an internship with them. That kind of thing. But I'm no longer involved in this program. But what did happen is that I wrote an article for Clean Sailors, which is an initiative that I'm also part of, which basically their mission is to mobilize the sailing community for ocean sustainability, and to bring to create cleaner seas through the sailing community. And I wrote an article for them about whales and their poo, and we did this great article on how can you help whales, you know, poo more. So we basically have more carbon sequestering, and it's avoiding ship strikes, and it's avoiding entanglements in nets, and it's avoiding plastic waste and those kind of things. And we had a great illustrator to do this. And so I wrote this article, and then at some point I was approached on LinkedIn by a naval captain, a captain of large tankers and freight ships. And he said, "Hey, Erik, I'm part of a outfit called Whale Guardians. You wrote this amazing article. Can we chat?" And I got to talking to them. And Whale Guardians is an American initiative that is purely focused on avoiding ship strikes between cargo ships and cruise ships and whales and large whales. Super focused, very effective in diverting shipping lines from whale pods. That's their game. What they do is they understand how shipping industry works. They understand how harbors work, how captains think, how logistics companies think, and they know where strikes take place because there are whale pods there. And basically they help divert these shipping lines around the pods without too much economic pain to the shipping companies. So they really speak that language of, we understand you don't want to divert, you're in a hurry, we get it. But if you do this and this and this, you'll be in the harbor in time and you wouldn't strike these, you wouldn't kill these whales. They're very effective at that, very good, very small outfit. It's a father and a daughter and this captain and some others. And they have asked me to join their league and to basically become part of their team to help them with the value proposition, to help them think about their organization, to help them think about their marketing communication. And again, I don't have a very strictly defined role other than I'm a designer, I understand services, I understand innovation, I understand value propositions, and I help them become better at what they do. So I'm looking at the roles and responsibilities in their scale up. How they need to grow, they're way too busy, they need to hire new people, and I'm helping them prioritize and sort of understand, you know, what kind of roles are there in an NGO and how can you scale up. This is almost like organization design, for example. So this is one of the things I'm doing. but basically, also anything that comes to hand. I write articles for them. The next thing I need to do is interview shipping captains to really understand their thinking and really understand better how they can be triggered to divert their routes, and what is in the way for them of diverting their routes. So again, so this whole story now led to me being part of Whale Guardians, and the adventure continues, and I just love working in this realm and being of value to these kind of NGOs. And then finally, a last topic that I would like to discuss with you is, I mean, this is cool. Whales are amazing, and I was lucky to be involved in this. And now I'm reflecting on, how does this work? What is my role as a designer in helping these companies really develop this very innovative new value proposition? And a statement that I'd like to throw into the group and maybe have a discussion on is that I think as designers, we are sort of trained to have this very neutral, facilitative, process-oriented role, right? We are there not to provide the content, but we're there to facilitate co-creation processes. At least this is very much the norm in service design. And I don't think that's what I want to do anymore. I don't think that's making me happy, and it's not providing the impact that I would like to have. So I've been shifting my career around to have a much more content oriented, to show much more thought leadership, to be much more entrepreneurial, and to not only say, okay, I can facilitate the process, but you own the content, but actually say, no, I think we should go that way. I feel as a designer, I see an opportunity there. Let's go there. So in my consulting work now, I'm much less co-creative, to be honest, and much more leading the way and showing what might be possible and inspiring people to innovate and to be more entrepreneurial and to go out there and try new things. And that, I mean, I don't think you can really facilitate people into that. You have to sort of, take the lead. You have to show the example. And I think what was successful about the work I did for the whale and dolphin conservation was the fact that I could clearly envision this value proposition being live. I could completely picture this. I could picture myself being a user of it. I had talked to a lot of friends and colleagues and partners and entrepreneurs who said, wow, this would be amazing. So I already saw it. All I needed to do is make them see it as well, and then take them along on that journey and give them some structure and some footholds to make this a reality. And that is, I think, as a designer, to play that role is something that I at least find very valuable and inspiring. And so my question to you, whoever is listening to this, is, do you agree with this? Is this also something you would like to do more? And then if yes, what would you need to adopt this role? Like, what kind of conditions would help you? I mean, for example, do you have the education to do that? Do you have enough knowledge? Do you have enough entrepreneurial skills? And what would keep you from adopting it? Do you feel like clients aren't really expecting this from you? Or do you feel like your colleagues don't expect this from you? Or do you feel like maybe you're not fully equipped to do this, or etc.? I would love to have this discussion with you. And that's my talk for now. And let me stop sharing so I can see who is there and open the discussion.
That was a really great talk, very insightful. Yeah, wow. Who knew that about whales?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm particularly interested in what you had to say about having a vision, leadership, and entrepreneurial mindsets, because that's something that I'm also a narrative that I'm also really actively working on, because I do believe as designers we have the most power to shape tomorrow. And if we think more entrepreneurially, we can actually create more opportunities, especially now post all that's happened and in the current markets where people are experiencing, difficulties.
Yeah.
I think that is the way forward, not relying on what is the little bit that's existing, but creating abundance through
Yeah.
our own talents.
Yeah, I agree. And it's what I think helps in picking up that role is to not think of yourself as the sole entrepreneur, but actually partner with clients, with established industry partners, with people out there in the market, to have that role as like, you are the designer, you can envision, you can trigger, you can inspire, you can research, you can create, and then to partner with someone who really gets the content very deeply and knows the market very deeply. I think that's a powerful combination. And actually, after this project, I started experimenting with that more, and basically always approaching parties in the market with a potential value proposition or a vision, or what if we could do this? And that has brought me some amazing, interesting work.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the partnership that counts. I think it's really more and more work deserves sort of consortia and ecosystems to tackle these complex, wicked problems that we're looking at.
So first, absolutely loved the presentation. Thank you so much. I know there is a dearth of questions there. It was because it was a beautiful presentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
And what you brought up at the end, that idea of taking a leadership role and, moving away from the facilitation. It's one that I've been struggling with myself because, what, as an information architect and being so focused on information and cognitive behavior, one of the big things that I understand and realize as I'm walking into any of these facilitation arenas is that half of my job, more than half of my job sometimes, is getting people to hear each other. So it is that need to get them to slow down just enough to hear each other. And I have seen design leaders go in and actually be worse about not hearing everybody else. So how can we both help people hear each other and not fall into that idea of leadership as I'm going to tell you what to do?
I know exactly what you mean. And I mean, that's really, you put the finger on the sore spot, because I think to be a leader and to help to provide this sense of direction and this vision and this sense of inspiration, you can only do that if you are if you create a safe space where you are respected and where other people feel respected. So the exact balance between I hear everyone and I can synthesize into something that is appealing to everyone, but it's one abstraction level higher. It's more conceptual, it's more visionary. So the individual group opinions lead to a northern star that is more inspiring than the individual questions, opinions, etc. I think that's a bit the trick of good facilitation from a leadership perspective, that what people say in a workshop is not, that individual comment is not the value. The value lies in puzzling the pieces together into a coherent, vision, sense of direction.
And getting people to that psychological safe space, where they will actually speak out loud that thing that they've been holding back because it's not going to be accepted so well. It's not with the leadership as it's already existing. So,
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know,
Yeah.
is my opinion being heard? Um, am I able to contribute? I think as a good facilitator, you are making people feel that their contribution becomes part of the whole.
Right.
So you integrate it into the bigger picture, and you can go back to the individual and say, remember you said this and that? I've encompassed that in the larger picture like this. It's now part of the, you know, that feels great. If you can give that to people, they really feel like they're contributing to something
They do.
bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is pretty advanced facilitation, and that requires like thinking on your feet, being super quick, very empathic, listen very well while you're creating with one brain half, your other brain half is still picking up the signals from the group. You know, I think there's a whole it's like top sport. It's pretty hard, but it's really cool if it works. Yeah.
I think my cat just came and she completely distracted me. What did I want to say? Oh yeah, passion.
It only makes me want to go grab mine. So don't worry.
I don't.
I think, you know, when you're talking about leadership, the best leaders I've seen are not the ones who want to be leaders, but who just are leaders. And I think you become a leader when you find your passion and you explore your position in relation to that passion.
Yeah.
So Erik loved sailing, he loved the waters, he found the whales, and through this passion, she loves attention, through this passion, he was able to create something new. So we're all individuals. There are only so much passions, but we can, it's like painting, you know, you've got some colors and you are the master of how you choose your colors and then what you want to do, and then you start working on it. And I think that's leadership.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say this, because I feel it's almost like I know that in my design school, when I was trained, there was a lot of stress on you have to be universally interested in whatever your client comes with or whatever your company happens to be working on, because as a designer, you're facilitating processes. I think there's nothing wrong with specializing and with actually focusing in your career and saying, I'm not interested in that topic, I'm interested in that topic. I know for service design, there's just a huge amount of work to do in healthcare. It just doesn't make my heart race. So I've decided in my career to say no to healthcare clients. I just don't do it. And you know, that might make me narrow-minded or whatever. Well, that's fine for me, because I'm focusing on things that make my, you know, raise my heartbeat. For me, there's nothing wrong with that. Passion is so powerful. Also, for other people to see passion in a facilitator, in a designer, is just hugely powerful. Yeah.
Okay, and I think
Simina is leaving.
And I think for myself that, you know, I went the very abstract way of give me juicy information. And I have a tendency to, you know, start very neutral, try to facilitate those discussions, try to get people to talk to each other. And mostly not even try. It's very rare for me to not succeed, because I assume that the first thing I try is going to not work. And so I pivot and pivot and pivot and pivot again until I finally get it all there. So, but when I then run into the designers who walk in and are like, this is the way it is done. I'm like, listen to people. No, wait, listen to people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I get that. And there's a balance to strike. Yeah, I think
there is.
I'm doing a lot of work in Thailand for projects also around blue carbon. And the Thai culture has quite some power distance, meaning they are very used to accept authority. And when you are a Farang, which is a Westerner, they have a great tendency to think you are right. so I need to play with that notion. They hire me to be right, but if I'm right, they only sort of sit there and wait for me to tell them what to do. And I cannot do that for, I mean, the team is like 40, 50 people. So on the one hand, I need to be that Western consultant leader who brings them this Western perspective, blah, 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 blah. But I don't want to be the one that takes responsibility away from them and sort of leaves them just sort of hanging back, waiting for instructions. Yeah. That is a very intricate cultural play that I have to bring into the equation. I have to, on a content level, I have to inspire and lead and be someone they look up to. But on a relationship level, I need them to trust me, and I need them to partner with me and be much more on my level and help me get things done. So I'm constantly switching between a more facilitative, empowering role where I put them on a pedestal versus putting myself on a pedestal and leading the way and showing them that it's all right to move forward. And I think that might be actually representative for the larger discussion we're having. A facilitator needs to be able to iterate between those roles.
Okay. So you're not even just switching, being a facilitator and then switching to a leadership role so if the learning curve is kind of like this, and then it gets, super expensive to do that last 5%, 10%, once you get to that point, you switch to a leadership role. Instead, you're switching back and forth all the way along the path. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah. Even in a session, I might switch, or in a meeting, I might switch those roles. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Bye, Samina. Yeah, sorry, just somebody had to leave. But Erik, also, I had a question. You said that you saw this video from the IMF, and my journey started with the G24, my design journey, and as part of the G24, I regularly worked with the IMF and World Bank and so forth. And although I wasn't on any of working physically on the projects, I did read a lot of the communiques. And the IMF, for example, also still has communiques, publications where, they post some challenges and what the situations are. And I think that's really a great source for inspiration for designers who want to become more entrepreneurial. Erik did,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're totally right. There's some challenges out there that where I sometimes think, wow, this would be so cool to put a group of designers on and to collaborate and sort of, enroll in these challenges. I think maybe traditionally the design community isn't so very good at these kind of formal, official tenders and big sort of institutional challenges that are out there. So again, find your partners. I think mostly I've been successful in entering these challenges by partnering with a governmental public body and maybe a private party that has deep content knowledge. But yeah, there's so many amazing challenges out there. And if you choose your focus and your passion, and then you dive deep, and you gotta love the research, you gotta love the reading, but once you dive into that rabbit hole of content, there's always you discover that there's so much work to do, and then you just sort of prototype your way into it. And I'm saying it now like it's easy. For every successful project, there's four or five failed attempts. But you shouldn't worry too much about those failed attempts. They're part of the the fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, there's a lot of people always ask, how can I be more entrepreneurial? What can I do? There's already companies doing all of these things,
Yeah,
but that's not the truth. There are a lot of
yeah,
companies creating problems by
yeah,
default,
yeah,
humanity creating problems by default.
yeah,
And by
yeah.
visiting these sort of governmental or, you know,
Mhm.
authoritative platforms, you can learn a lot and use that to start solving problems. And if
Yeah,
you're solving a problem, you have value, and then you
yeah,
can exchange that value. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And when you are a freelancer or an agency and you want to work in a certain domain that you find interesting, my advice will be start by putting some ideas on paper and then don't pitch your agency, but pitch the idea, because it shows
Mm-hmm.
commitment, it shows interest, it shows thinking, and it might not be the idea that gets executed. I've often shown ideas where the company would say, yeah, that's really nice, but we've tried it and it failed. But it's really cool that you came to us with that, you're showing the initiative. We'd love to work with you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's also a door opener.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that you are not just waiting for them to formulate a challenge to you, but you actually have done the thinking yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think in your industry that these are the top 3 challenges you're facing, and therefore I think this might be of value to you, right? That shows much more, I don't know, much more engagement and much more understanding, and you're much more positioning yourself on a partnership level. And I think
Yeah.
that's interesting for clients. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any
Do
more?
do you see that your learning curve is needs to kind of be in place before you go out to these people? So do you think that's part of what's going on when you're doing those pitching the idea? Is that you're showing that you've gone up the learning curve, now you can talk on their level?
Um, yeah. I think, yeah, what I show them is I went through the effort of diving into your world and trying to understand with my limited knowledge your world, and in all modesty, what I pick up is these 3 things that might be worthwhile to you. I mean, you cannot barge into a room and say, hey, I figured you out, I know what you need to do. That's not how it works. But if you bring the story in, I'm super interested in your markets, can I try some ideas with you? That is an entrepreneurial conversation. That is a conversation on a partnership level. That is showing them that you want to carry the load of being responsible, right? It's a completely different conversation from, I can design websites and apps. Do you have anything for me? Because that's very passive. It puts them in the role of client and you in the role of executor. And I think it's just a much more pleasant conversation to have if you position yourself as, someone who's done their homework. And
It's
can everyone
also,
do this? No. I mean, if you just graduated from university, maybe you're not quite ready for this. But then at least you can try to learn and you can try to adopt this strategy. Yeah, but I mean, part of it is, of course, also experience. But I do think in our education programs, I would like to have a bit more attention for this kind of entrepreneurial thinking.
who was it? Was it the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad? He speaks about education not being there to educate people, but to create workers. So I think that's why
Yeah,
they don't really give you that entrepreneurial spirit.
yeah,
It's lacking.
yeah,
It's, you know,
yeah, yeah. To build on work ethics and just work strategies. How do you survive in a big corporate? I mean, I get so many people coming to me saying, Eric, I find it really hard to be a designer in a big company because no one's taking me seriously and I have to explain my value all the time. Yeah, welcome to the real world. That's life. That's work, you know. You have to, you have to explain your value. No one's going to just blindly accept that. But it seems like these people they're not trained in being a worker. They're not trained in being part of a corporation that has goals that may be larger than yours. You know, so I think there's a lot to be done there in helping people enter the labor market be more ready for labor.
Yeah, and I think with the previous question also, Amanda, sorry, Mark.
Angela, it's okay. It's been happening. It's fine.
I knew it was it just
Started
you
with
remind me of my friend Amanda. Like you have this anyway. When you have a passion about a certain area and you want to reach out to a company, I think it's also you don't have to be perfect, and the way that they engage with you is also a reflection on them. And so you don't really want to invest your time with people who won't invest their time with you. So if you approach them and they respond, it means that they're really, they're really interested, and that's a really great way to to weed your garden, to make sure that your efforts are worth it.
Yeah.
So, and this is segueing a little bit. So please feel free to say this is not the discussion. But one of the things going back to the workforce and education and everything like that, I've had this niggling thought in the back of my mind that agency, that ability to say, this is what I do, this is how I fit in here. I don't want to do that. I don't want to work in healthcare. I want to work in information. That part of what the educational system is doing is saying, well, you can't think of that. You need to know X, Y, and Z. That's what you do. Then they go into the workforce and they're like, well, I do X, Y, and Z. Let me do X, Y, and Z. And the workforce is saying, well, there's this cognitive dissonance happening around agency, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I recognize that. Yeah.
Can I just interrupt you quickly, Eric? I just want to invite some of the live viewers to join us, please, in the conversation. We've got several people watching, and it would be really nice to see who you are and to hear your opinions. And sorry, Eric, to have disturbed you. Continue, please.
No, that's totally good. Yeah. Agency. I agree with you. There's like a lack of identity of younger designers, so there's two sides to this story. One is, and now I'm going to sound really old. Oh my gosh. One is a sort of a lack of identity where students seem to be afraid, or just people who have just graduated seem to be afraid to have an opinion, to have a direction, to make choices, to focus, to like something and not like something else. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the example I gave earlier, like, oh my gosh, people don't understand me. They don't understand my value. And here I am. I'm this great designer. I'm here to solve all these wicked problems of the world. And people give me a lousy, I have to redesign the button. And they're frustrated. I think the latter is an example of a bit too much agency, like being attached to your identity as a designer and not being willing to climb your way up the ladder through redesigning the button. And the first is a lack of agency and a lack of identity, because we've been trained to be these multifaceted facilitating process people, and both are not really helpful.
So what about the other side of that relationship? What about what do you think the workplace And the educational system is kind of imparting as part of the information that they're
So I think in the workplace, in large corporations, it's still really hard to organize creativity and serendipity and innovation. It's still, big corporations are still organized to structure and to predict and to manage and to operate and to scale and all these things that are not necessarily easy for designers and creative people to operate in. That's, on the one hand, that's a fact of life that you need to learn to deal with, and you need to play with it. You need to not take it too seriously, and you need to sort of meander your way through that. And on the other hand, I think it's changing very rapidly, and more organizations are actually managing to organize for change and are actually managing to give creativity a place and to innovate in a pre-structured way, etc. And I think some people entering the labor market might be a bit naive as to how those things are happening and why they're happening and how you can contribute and not only be angry or frustrated. Which then goes back to the educational system. Are we teaching the craft of design, or are we teaching the application of design in an economical context? I think there's too much attention to the craft, which is great for the first 2 or 3 years, but at some point you need to mature into, okay, now we know the craft. How are you going to bring that into an economy that is oriented towards scaling, towards managing, towards predicting outcomes, towards generating revenue, and your fuzzy, designerly creative, divergent work doesn't dovetail with that. You need to be aware of that. That doesn't make your work less valuable. It just means that you need to learn how to dovetail. And I don't think we teach our students that very well.
I think
that is a different cat.
Yes. My cat had kittens, so that's yeah. On top of
multiple
the
iterations.
awareness initiative, I also have a full house of cats.
Wow, my God.
Sorry, again, derailing the conversation. This is
totally fine. Totally fine.
But I wanted to say, Erik, and now I got distracted by the cat again. What was it? Yeah, it's left me completely. But yeah, I had a question for you. Do you have anything to say, Angela, or to add on? What was the last question, by the way?
We were talking about agency.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. So I think we go through these phases where we really grow up into a different world, and one of those, the best example is Christmas. As a child, you're taught about this imaginary dude, and he's going to bring you some stuff. And I remember when my daughter was 5, she said to me, "Mommy, I know Santa is not real. Do you want to keep me stupid forever?" And I was like, I'm not trying to keep you stupid. And so I think at that age you become aware that there's a reality beyond what you've been taught your entire life. And it's the same for when you enter the workforce. You go to school, you go to university, you have all of these trainings, all of these mindsets, and then you get into the workforce and Santa is dead. You have to work. It's not nothing. They didn't prepare you for the taxes, for the administration, legal stuff and power battles. None of that is ever talked about. So that's also why I think creating these sort of conversations and sharing it with younger people, that is also leadership, because you're helping them learn that Santa is not real in a really, in a mature way, I guess.
I love the metaphor. That really works. Yeah.
So
Santa's not real. Your design skills are only part of the equation.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is. It's a sad fact, but
Yeah.
I think there's more of the equation that's in your control than you think. Like having your passion, that's your control.
Yeah.
Taking action, it's in your
Mhm.
control. So we're taught that we rely on this and we rely on that, and we are very dependent on our systems.
Yeah.
But once you reach a certain maturity, you know that you are in charge,
Mhm.
and you can, even if you have to take a few hours after work or on the weekends, you can start to drive your life where you need to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
Mm.
And it's interesting to talk about the things that are in your control. Huh? Another one is your training yourself to become better at communicating about your value rather than complaining about they don't get it. Train yourself in explaining what value you can bring and come with examples and show them. I think the reason why my conversation with the CEO of Whale and Dolphin Conservation was successful and he asked me to become a partner was simply the fact that in 5 minutes I could explain my idea, how I can help them, how it might be a good idea for them, how it's unique in the market. And he was like, yeah, okay, fair enough, good story. When can we start? You know, and that takes years of practice.
Mm-hmm.
But after 1 week of practice, you're better than before. So it's worthwhile practicing, right? It's not something you need to look up to as this big mountain.
And I mean, you don't necessarily have to become partner as well. You can just become, coordinator or
Sure. Yeah.
trainer, So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be gained, and there's a lot more potential to being entrepreneurial and
Yeah.
looking into
Yeah.
the actual challenges of the world is
Yeah.
a great enabler.
Exactly. But no one is going to pave that way for you. You have to pave it yourself.
Mhm.
That's that's a bit dirty work, but it's lots of fun.
Yeah. Well, I think my takeaway from this event is vision, leadership, and entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
and that enables you to do the projects that shape tomorrow. So
Well,
that's
cool.
yeah.
Wow.
Do
That is
you?
actually a really good sort of, I don't know if you want to end the conversation, but this is a good place to end it because it's a really
Yeah, yeah,
good
yeah,
final quote. Are you
yeah.
getting?
I just wanted to add that because it is 3:30. We can go as long as we want until 6 or just to 6. But in case we ended, I just wanted to put that out there so that I could
Yeah,
share it.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Are you getting some questions or comments from the people who are looking online? No. Okay.
No, no. You guys are welcome to join us in the call or post your questions in the comments, and I will ask them to Erik.
Mhm.
Usually the events after 6 are a bit more engaging because people are
People are
tending
done.
to join us while they're at work, and then of course
Mm.
it's mainly just listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, but altogether, I think it's quite a nice turnout. I was happy that Martha and Angela, now I'm gonna obsess about your name since I made that mistake.
I mean, most of the people who know me well call me Ange. Would the single syllable help you? So
No. It's just I was thinking of my friend when I saw your face, and then I said her name instead of your name, and the trauma of doing that now just makes me anxious.
yeah, I'm of a certain age. So I grew up wanting to be called Ange, and my family still calls me Angie, and I introduce myself as Angela because people are like, what? If I just say hi, I'm Ange. So, and I've been
Yeah.
doing this for decades. So I don't pay as much of attention to my name as I probably should.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
And where are you based, Angela? Where do you work from?
I am currently in Des Moines, Iowa, which is in the smack dab center of the North American continent.
Yeah, Des Moines. Wow. Cool.
Yeah. But I worked for decades in Boston. So yeah.
So very early morning there?
Yeah, it's about 8:30 in the morning right now. So we started at 7 a.m., but I'd already been up for a couple hours, so no worries.
That's good.
I think it's quite nice, the dedication that we've had of people in this event. We've had some events that we've had an event that was at 10 o'clock in the evening and people showed up. And on Monday, Don Norman and Robert Kozma joined us at 7 a.m. their time.
Wow.
So they also got up early, and I think, that's really heartwarming how much dedication people have, and it's
Very cool.
I think super cool.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah.
And just
Good.
just from my perspective, the reason that I've been enjoying these so much is because they are focused more on humanism and people as people, and how we fit into the entirety of our world, and not just making the money.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it does make a difference how you approach it. How you build things, the motivations that govern you are a bit different. I think everybody sort of needs money. We need to survive, but if that's your main driving force, the evidence will soon start to show, and then you'll have to develop a new gimmick and a new gimmick and a new gimmick all the time to keep catching the new suckers as they're born every day. Sorry, but if you build from value, like if you have a love for the ocean, or you have a love for making diagrams or illustrating things, and you build from that core, then it's the best sort of things that can come out of it. Businesses, organizations, groups, whatever you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Erik, you're here in Amsterdam, right?
Rotterdam.
Oh, Rotterdam. I thought you were here in Amsterdam.
No, if for sale, I would have come to Amsterdam, but
yeah, man, I was in such a rush when I organized because there was a request for the networking events, and I agreed that there will be a networking event every day. And wanted to make Friday special. So I started looking for special events around Amsterdam. And I got to a website that told me that sale was in Amsterdam this Friday. And so, Angela, I scheduled a networking event where we're going to meet for dinner close to, in Amsterdam North. And then afterwards, we were going to walk around Sail. Sail Amsterdam is this big festival where there's just thousands of ships, and there's parties on the docks, and so I canceled the event.
But then it turned out to be 2025, so we have to wait a bit. Let's keep that one for a rain check.
Yeah, definitely. But so I don't think we'll have a networking event today, but I think from what I've gathered, people are connecting via the groups, so Slack and the group on LinkedIn, but also by attending the same events, sort of connecting. But I think it's really important to connect certain individuals working in the same field or in the same topics, because then we showcase that there is options, there's possibilities.